Who is Anish Malpani?
Half the waste in India, 50 to 80% of the waste in India is either landfill or untreated. Plastic it's a more complicated thing. It's not the best thing in the world. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's got issues like everything has.
What is impact?
3 ways to look at impact. Like lives touched, lives impacted, and then lives changed. I think everybody wants sustainable products. Entrepreneurs, I feel like some of us complain a lot. Like, nobody wants to pay premium for our material. Everybody has too many high requirements. I think we flip that narrative.
Please tell me what is MLP. Welcome to the first ever video episode of Ethically Yours podcast. I'm your host Darshana, and today we will be diving into something really cool. We're looking at sunglasses that are made from chips packets. Yes, you heard that right. My guest is Anish Malpani, founder of Without, a company turning snack waste into sustainable eyewear. We'll talk about his journey, his impact, and maybe even some fun rapid fire along the way. So let's get into it. We are waiting for Anish Malpani to join this conversation.
You're recording.
And
what's up?
We've been waiting for this conversation for how long?
Years. The night that Darshana ghosted me, we were supposed to have our first podcast interview 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
When did you launch? The day you launched is when I was like, this is cool. I need to speak to this person. Is when I
That's not very long
DM'd
ago,
you.
dude. That was February 2023. That's like a year
That's
and a half
it?
ago. It seems like so long.
Okay, chalo, we'll get what we have. We anyways thought it was 3 years.
It's better.
Only it's happening. I
It's
think
better.
that's the biggest takeaway for us.
That's true. It is the biggest takeaway. Wow, we've been through, I think, so many significant events that happened in the last 15 months in our life, at least in my life, and I feel like you've been a part of many of those significant events. So it's very interesting.
Yes, actually, in hindsight, good that you ditched me in all my previous invitations of the podcast, because now we have so much more to talk about.
Hey, I didn't ditch you. You ghosted. I have proof. Whatever makes you happy, Darshana. Whatever makes you happy.
Good. So firstly, this is my first video episode endeavor. So you're my guinea pig. Welcome to Ethically Yours turning video.
Wow. Yeah, I'm honored. It's an honor and a privilege.
I would have ideally liked to do this face to face in like a cozy setting and all. But all my dreams and aspirations for this podcast just makes me ghost my guests. So now you know
No,
where I go.
On the last, so let's to be fair to everybody. I did ditch you the last time, but I was like, we'll do this in person in Bombay, and then I was just like, it was just an insane day. So I was like, listen, I can't. I'm sorry. So I think it's even now.
It's fitos now.
Fitos.
Okay, great. Chalo, acha hai. I'm just going to use this in the trailer that you ditched me. Finished.
Yeah. Listen, you can cut me up to make me sound like whatever you want me to, Darshana. You've already edited me in a mini series, film, whatever.
That was fun.
So you're an expert.
But you have a presence, you know that, right? I mean, you know what to do on camera, so it's a good guinea pig that I'm having.
Yes, thank you for that. But I hate listening to compliments, man. It's so weird. It's really weird. So no compliments in this episode.
ऐसे कैसे होगा? इतना बड़ा काम you are doing, so then
real conversation. Real
करने का. ठीक है, let's get started with real conversation. And the first real question is, who is Anish Malpani?
Wow, this is like, let's start with this. Who's Anish Malpani? I don't know. I feel like I'm constantly thinking. I'm constantly evolving into a version of myself that I want to be. And I think in the last 7 years of my life, I've made big leaps towards that. So who's Anish? Anish is a very, very privileged person with a lot of luck, with a great hand of cards. And I'm trying to hopefully use the privilege that I have to do something that is more meaningful than making rich people richer. So I think that's who I'm trying to be, and I have a long way to go.
Are you an ace of hearts?
Oh God, she's No ace of nothing. I just have a good hand of cards. I've been blessed with an amazing family, very supportive, amazing set of friends. Uh, wealth, time. What else can you want? So I don't know if I have an ace of cards. That's so weird, man. Yeah, I don't know. Who is Darshana?
This is
You
about
know,
you.
you. No. I
This
know.
when
So
you start
we
your
talked about this.
podcast, then
We talked about this being an equal conversation.
we
No.
okay. It's a flow.
I feel like nobody messes with Darshana. I feel like all of
Oh
the things
my
that
God.
I don't mess with Darshana. I'm scared of Darshana. It's been so much fun doing work with you. But yeah, sorry. I will stop.
No,
deviating.
flow. ये flow है.
Flow.
It's an experiment. We'll see how it goes. But I'm very.
This episode won't air. I think
This has happened. This has happened with me. I have recorded 2 times. I'm like मजा नहीं आया वापस करते. In fact, the last episode that I released, it was with Shubhi. We recorded one during the pandemic, and I took myself a lot more seriously then. Now I just want to have a good chat. So then we spoke, and I said मजा नहीं आया. Sorry, एक और बार करेंगे. She's like, yeah, sure. Then we recorded again. मुझे फिर भी मजा नहीं आया. But I said no, I have, because it was 1 year that I had recorded that episode and it never made it. So it was her birthday actually when I released. I said, it's a gift for her. There is nothing about you in that episode, so just go and publish it. So that's how it's on air. And that day I decided that perfection on one side, but I just really want to do what I want to do, which is just have amazing conversations with amazing people like you, because it's such amazing work that's happening. So it's really, so if that's me, then maybe that's me. I just want to chat and yeah. But I was saying that it's very interesting that you mentioned a deck of cards. I'll tell you why. Because my ultimate goal for this podcast is to record guests in person while playing cards. Because we're obsessed with cards. We have a routine in the family. Like towards the end of the day, we'll chill a little, we'll play some games. And there have been so many versions of even a rummy or other games. So that's the end goal.
Teen
But we'll
Patti
see
or
when
poker?
that
Are we playing some hardcore? Are we playing something hardcore?
I don't know if it's allowed because I haven't seen a lot of videos with poker and all. We'll probably just.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm interrupting a lot.
No, please. Flow.
No, I feel like poker, as long as you're not using real money, it's okay.
Chalega. We'll make without coins poker chips. Hey, new product idea. You can make poker chips out of your material.
Yes. Actually.
Okay.
We can. We just made gamlas, planter pots with our material.
Nice.
We just made the world's first. I wish I had it with me. We made the world's first shampoo bottle with shampoo sachets, right? Pretty cool.
Oh wow!
It's very hard to blow more bottles with high amounts of recycled material. So pretty happy about that. So
nice.
Some benchmarks are being hit.
Many benchmarks are being hit. But before we get there, let me ask you, why did you get into this? Yeah, I was just thinking about this and weird thought. Did you eat a lot of chips as a kid? And is this redemption for all the trash that you ever generated? Is that why you're doing without?
No, not at all. I think a lot of people hoped that was the answer because it would be a really good catchphrase and a really cool thing. Oh, he liked chips so much and then he made them into sunglasses. No, I didn't really have a big fascination for chips or sunglasses. It just kind of, I think it's a really long story, to be honest. But
go for it.
It was after many years of trying to figure out what I want to do with my life, right? So it all started when I was in New York. I felt like I had it all, right? I remember moving to New York and I was like, this is it. This is my dream. I can't imagine living anywhere else. I have this great job. They've applied for my green card. I love this city. And I was so excited. I'm like, this is it, right? And I was a year and a half, 2 years into New York, I'm depressed. And there's no reason for this. It's very hard to explain to people that I'm depressed because I have, there's no debt, good job, good money, green card, apartment, friends, football, poetry, everything. But I was really down and probably the best thing that ever happened because it gave me a chance to reflect on what I want to do with my time and life and the privilege that I have. I realized I did not want to make rich people richer while making myself richer. I wanted to use the privilege that I have to do something more meaningful. But I'm like, what is that? How, I remember I was super nihilistic. I was like, there's no point to anything. I was, and I went down a rabbit hole of reading a lot and trying to see like, what is worth spending time on. And then I realized that, there's a lot of man-made injustice in this world that doesn't need to exist. If people with money, with privilege, with power do not try and do something about it, then it's very hard to make change happen. That doesn't mean that people without money can't make change. They actually have a higher motivation than, let's say, I do to get out of their issues. But they might not have the resources or the power or the money to do that. So I felt like because I was so privileged and had everything, there was a moral obligation on me to use my privilege to something more valuable. So I was like, okay, I want to go back to India, work on solving real social environmental problems, creating like financially viable solutions. I didn't really believe in the nonprofit model, which relies on sympathy, which relies on charity. Charity is very hard to scale. Sympathy is very hard to scale. So that was the thing. But I'm like, this kid from New York. I've not lived in India for 20 years. I don't know what impact is, what poverty is, and how change can happen. So I did not want to be this guy from New York who thinks he knows everything and come back and and try to, come save the day. No hero complex here. So I spent the next 3 years learning about what impact is, how to make change happen from the ground up. And I knew that my final stop was India because if you want to make change happen, it takes decades and decades for change to happen. So you can't just, fool around in different parts. So I wanted to spend time in different parts of the developing world to learn first, and then eventually come to India and kind of start doing work here. So I was in Guatemala after New York for like 15 months working with local entrepreneurs. I had a skill to offer, finance. So I'm like, yeah, I can help you. And then, just for free. So you can teach me about what it takes to work here. And then I was in Nairobi, Kenya, again, doing the same thing, working with local entrepreneurs. And I felt like I learned a lot. Then I quickly upskilled in London for 3 months, learned data science and AI before ChatGPT was a thing. This was in 2019. And in December 2019, I moved back to India right before the pandemic. And I think because then in India, I started researching the waste space. Researching the impact space in general. And while researching the impact space, which means poverty and environment, all these things, I came across the waste management space. And I found it to be very intriguing because it's close to 4 million waste pickers who live really poor lives. And now you've heard my pitch many times now. But 4 million people, close to 4 million waste pickers who live really poor lives. And globally, that number is 20 million. Hard to know exactly how many. It could be lesser, could be more, depending, because nobody measures this. At the same time, half the waste in India, 50 to 80% of the waste in India is either landfill or untreated. So I'm like, oh wow, there's this economic resource in kachra and waste. There's this poor population, and obviously waste is an environmental hazard that contributes significantly to disease, to climate change. So I was like, okay, this is super interesting. So then I researched the waste problem. I volunteered to work for a nonprofit in India, in Aurangabad. Read a lot, spoke to a lot of people, met a lot of people, and then this MLP, multi-layered plastic or chips packets, kept coming up as this black sheep of the waste family. Nobody wants to deal with it. Everybody wants to, and that's what led to us starting to work on this, right? And then sunglasses came after a lot of research or whatever. So that's how the chips packet. That's my really long answer, as you requested, to this question of yours.
I love it. I have too many questions now. I'm not going to the sunglasses already because there's so much that has happened here already. Where do I start? Okay, let's talk about impact. You spend a lot of time understanding impact in India and in other parts of the world as well. What is impact, and how does one really get a deeper understanding of it? And talk to me in a layman's language. Impact, kya hai?
Well, I mean, more than layman, I'm going to be very real about impact, right? I think there are a lot of definitions, and the problem is that, see, you do a little bit of good, right? And the whole world was going to high five you and be like, oh, wow, wow, it's so good, right? So there's, even if you do a little, you get a lot of love. And that's dangerous because that doesn't allow you to actually go deeper in impact. So I think, one of our investors or upcoming investors and one of my friends, I guess, he defined this really interestingly. In the impact space, there are 3 ways to look at impact, lives touched, lives lives impacted and then lives changed, right? So lives touched is where you give like 100,000 people, a place, eyeglasses, prescription eyeglasses. You've touched 100,000 lives. Lives impacted is maybe you give them some regular income for like a short period of time, and then lives changed is when you fundamentally change their lives, right? And I think lives touched is very bastardized as a metric, because you can be like, oh, Infosys or Reliance hire employs 100,000 people, so they're having a great amount of impact. Yes, of course they're having impact, right? But that is not necessarily the best way to define impact, because they're not looking at people that are less privileged necessarily. It's more of they're just playing with the rules by the rules of the game, which is not a bad thing. But I think for me, impact is defined as deeper impact, right? As creating systemic change and not short term. Not like quick fixes or vanity impact metrics. Like, 100,000 people were given a meal. That's great, but is that fundamentally changing anything? I don't think so. The same thing with environment, right? Like, we have so much now with all these platforms that are like giving carbon credits and connecting these people to these people, and that. But is not touching the physical aspect of climate change as much, right? So again, we get lost in, we connected these many companies, we neutralized these many, but like, how is this being utilized? All like the afforestation companies, or the carbon sequestration companies, or the recycling companies. People are actually in the field trying to fundamentally change things. That's not enough. There's not enough of that, right? So I think, how do you focus on depth of impact is something that I've found to be very important. And again, just to kind of connect the dots, because you get a lot of pats on your back because of you doing anything good, right? Even if you come up with an app that is trying to like increase people, hey, if you check this box and don't take the stairs today, or walk to work, and you save like 0.001 kilograms of carbon footprint, and then that makes you feel good, and then that actually can be worse, because that means that gives you moral license to not care, because like, I'm doing my bit, right? So I think impact is, I'm not trying to be complex about this, but I think, how do you focus on depth of impact, focusing on real change, and also, like, for anybody who's in the impact space, how do you not fall in the trap of being like called a hero all the time, or like get into your head, right? Like, it's like so easy to put yourself on a pedestal. So kind of keeping yourself grounded, focusing on trying to solve the problem. So that's what I feel like is impact. It's really complex, it's deep, and it's hard.
I like that, and there are 2 points of views. One, of course, is digging deeper into impact, and of course that's the ideal case scenario. But let's say, and of course organizations who are working into impact space should definitely look at going deeper, setting goals that are really more tangible vis-a-vis just touching lives, like you mentioned. But if you have to look at impact on a civil level, right, like say any other human being, it just seems that the conversation still seems to be extremely nascent, right? People really don't know what our impact is. What is MLP is the next question that I'm going to come to, because a lot of people don't know. But for such people, would you say that, okay, that lowest hanging fruit is also good enough, because we are in that much of a mess that even if you do a little is okay, but that continuous progress needs to be there? And how do you sort of balance that? Because there are also organizations and companies, and even if you talk about companies with, let's say, regulations or the mandates on ESG, there are organizations of all scales now who are forced to do some amount of impact work. So how do we sort of balance it? Because also impact needs funding. It needs a lot of patient funding, and we do not have that robust ecosystem yet. So kudos to you, and I'm very, very happy that you've been able to raise the kind of funds. And I think that goes back to the fact that you want to make it into a scalable business and not an NGO where sympathy is your driver. But how do we sort of balance this, the entire depth of impact narrative?
No, I think that's a really good question. I don't want to like discount people who are trying to do like small things at home to make things better. Obviously, that's, all of that counts, all that helps. I think my point on that is do that, but don't, I think, I'd urge people to not fall into the trap of being like, okay, this is how, look, I'm doing my bit now. So like, don't. I mean, it's because I feel like most people do a little bit at home. Let's say zero waste or separate, segregate. It's important, obviously, but it's obviously making them feel better about themselves, which is also important. But I think just to kind of disconnect between that, look, I'm doing this because I feel it makes me feel good. But I don't want to pretend that this is what's going to solve the problem, right? So that doesn't remove this, not pressure, but at least this, like, I should be aware, right? I should be aware that I'm not falling into traps. Like when I talk to people, they're like, I know the secret to this. Everyone should just recycle all their waste at home. That's the answer. And I'm like, that obviously, yes, that's amazing. If we get every single person to segregate and recycle all their own wet waste and plastic waste, we will solve this problem, right? But then realistically, that is just not, that is so like important, like so hard. Changing consumer behavior in a developing country is really hard. Right? So I think just kind of being realistic about it is important. And then I think that the holy grail to impact is scaling deep impact, right? Like, so scaling depth. So you go deep and then you go wide, right? But not just staying at the surface and going wide. And scaling impact is what I'm trying to do. And I've got naysayers, like not naysayers, people have been like, Anish, this, obviously we love your vision and ambition about this, but like, good luck. It's not going to happen. It's super hard, right? And I think, and I don't know, maybe I'll fail, and maybe we'll fail. But I think that's what needs to happen. And that takes time. That takes decades. So there needs to be some sort of like patience, not just from the investor's perspective, but even from our perspective, right? We have to think long term and be like, look, these problems are not going away instantly. And I feel like this doom and gloom narrative, like, oh my God, if we don't change anything right now, then everything is the end, is actually bad, because then it puts you in panic mode. And then we just, it's fear that is not good for progress, because like all of these climate change models, prediction models, do not take into consideration adaptation, right? Human adaptation. Humans are the most adaptable species in the world. Now, I'm not trying to downplay climate change, but what I'm trying to say is that we have to look at things more holistically, and there has to be some play for hope and some long-term solutions, right? That require like seeding, and seeds, like trees, all trees don't grow quickly. So I think the balance is different, right? So I guess for the person at home, what I'm trying to say is that obviously do your bit. That's important, I think. But I at the same time, like, don't feel like that's not necessarily the answer. So look, support other causes that are actually trying to go further, or try and be very highly aware. I think being super aware and being honest and pursuing truth in this space is really paramount. And I think it goes back to your question about MLP, right? Like, what is MLP? Why is that an issue? Why are people not talking about it? And it's a very interesting case it's a very interesting case study, multi-layered. But anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, Darshana. I think that you're you're pretty deep in this space, and I'm sure you have a perspective. I'd love to know your thoughts as well.
No, I agree with you. I think absolutely we are at a time and space where we need systemic changes. And I think consumer behavior is really, really key. And I really feel where you started from, right? People with privilege need to take the ownership also to have this conversation more often. I really want to see all our influencers, celebrities, or artists, people who have that kind of influence, who are talking about anything and everything. I mean, if TikTok can be selling product with just a person, dancing to something, and then those conversions going crazy, I'm sure that we can build this entire narrative. It's just that, I don't know, people are scared. Also, internet is crazy, because if somebody's talking about something today and if that person is caught on a private jet, then, that's also a problem. So I think we also need to create a sense of patience or inclusivity or tolerance, perhaps, to also have this conversation in all its shapes and pros and cons. Then this goes to the entire conversation of greenwashing, that, then you speak only if you are 100% right. So I have, very mixed opinions about the way it's being spoken of. And I would still feel that we are unfortunately at the rock bottom of the situation. I mean, we are at an existential crisis and nobody knows about it. And a lot of times when we speak to people who are not in this space, they're like, oh, is it? I didn't know. I mean, how doesn't anybody know as of today? I mean, we're living this life, right? There are no playgrounds for your kids to go out. There's no water. The air quality is always a problem. And even when people have these apps now looking at AQI, I don't think they understand that where is this problem really arising from, and that you have a role to play. It's like traffic. Every time I get stuck in traffic, I'm like, "Arey yaar, kya traffic hai?" But when you just zoom out a little, you are the damn traffic. So, it's really that situation where we can't be pointing fingers at anybody any longer. It's really, we need to change as a humanity. And I feel that the people on top have a lot of responsibility because it is the privileged who are also responsible for, comparatively higher emissions, while those at the bottom of the pyramid just typically end up suffering, the impact of all of this crisis. So, but on that, you mentioned about, also entrepreneurs required to be patient and just like warrior spirit. And I want to talk a little about eco-anxiety, right? I mean, there have been times now, I spent around 8 years in this space after pivoting my career from a retail becho sales target, from that life to a life where I said, I don't want to be a part of the problem anymore. And you're doing so much every day and you're speaking to people, and at some point you feel, "Arey, kuch ho hi nahi raha hai. Why are people not taking this seriously? And how much would a handful of us really be able to do?" Do you have situations like that? Do you feel that pressure? You feel helplessness? You feel that anxiety of sorts? And it is pretty common. I've spoken to a lot of founders, and founders especially, I feel, at least professionals who are working with some organization, hamara khana pina is taken care of. So at least it's not to that. But I've been a founder, right? I've run Fair Trunk, and I know that like paying my EMIs used to be a challenge that time, but you didn't want to give up. So how does that play in your life? Are you there yet, or how do you deal with it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think, just to address what you said earlier, I feel like I see things differently, right? So I think just going off of what I said before, which was, doing small things at home, is fine, is good, but it's not really solving the problem. At the same time, I feel like changing consumer behavior is as much as we should, I'm not saying we should stop changing our behaviors and trying to be better. I just don't think that's scalable and easy as much. Because I think especially in the developing world, like, okay, if we, our friends in the privileged class will, there's enough obligation for them to change their behavior, but like 80% of the population in the world, why, right? They have other problems to deal with right now. Why should they be more green? So yes, that's one thing. And then the other part that I wanted to answer your question about the eco-anxiety and the entrepreneurs and the patients, for me, like it's about changing systems, right? And playing by the rules of the game to some extent. It's just, if you just look at this thing called capitalism, it's very interesting, right? Now some people hate on it. Some people are saying that it's the best thing in the world. It's neither, right? It's somewhere in the middle. It's done great things. The reason we can have this conversation is probably because of capitalism, right? But at the same time, it has resulted in negatively impacting the environment, income inequality. That is somewhat unfair distribution of resources. But it still has done a lot of good things, right? So my perspective more is, how do you bend capitalism towards being more human-centric or earth-centric or resource-centric, right? Which is not making profit your measure of success, but, profit becomes one of the many measures of success. The other one should be like, how the different stakeholders in the supply chain, right? Whether it's the suppliers, the vendors, whether it's the people that are working, the people affected. So just looking at things more holistically, looking at, I think Kate Raworth has written an excellent book called Dirt Economics about this, where she kind of says that, like, we should be looking at the economy more holistically, and I think just going back to sustainability, and as an example, right? Like, I mean, in the world that we're in, fashion, or in the world that you're in, fashion, and we kind of are in, I think everybody wants sustainable products, but they do not. But the elephant in the room is that they're not going to compromise on quality. They're not going to compromise on price, and they're not going to compromise on style, right? So I think entrepreneurs, I feel like some of us complain a lot, like, oh, nobody wants to pay premium for our material. Everybody has too many high requirements. I think we just flip that narrative. Like, we'll be like, look, if we provide you with high quality material that is of a similar price, right? Not 2x, 3x premium, maybe a 10%, 20%, right? That is, if we could provide you that consistently in large quantities, then you're going to switch to using our material, right? And I think that's the bet that I want to make, right? I want to use human genius, right? Just our ability to bend this world to make it like the way it is, instead of making humans like net negative assets, we're sucking resources from the earth. How can we become net positive assets, right? And I think that's what, for me, it's changing the systems to be like, hey, how do we just be more sustainable, more circular, and make that through technology, through adaptation? Because telling people to become monks or to reduce consumption, I think, is very hard, right? Because I remember doing this thought experiment, right? The answer to all of this, right? Honestly, if I could wave a magic wand, is that everybody becomes a monk, right? The Gandhian life, right? Go live in a village, minimum consumption, just meditate a lot. You'll get mental peace, you'll get emotional peace, you'll be positive. Everything will be great. That's the answer, right? So I think all of these gurus who are working on that, genuinely, that's amazing. But then I look back, I zoom out and be like, okay, what's realistic? Are we going to be able to convince 8 billion people to all become monks, right? I don't think that's going to happen. Then I think it's fair for people just coming out of poverty, or just like in the lower middle income class, that's just kind of getting a little bit more wealth and money as the country becomes more prosperous, right? Like, you know what? Guess what? Going to a party, right? Traveling the world is fun. It's super fun, right? Eating chocolates, eating chips is fun, right? Now suddenly, because it's bad for the world, right? You're going to tell everybody to stop doing this, stop traveling, stop doing this. And somebody who's just gotten money, like, wait a minute, you can do all these fun things, and now I can't. So I don't think I can't go to somebody and say that to them, right? So I can't tell them, hey, go become a monk. That's the best thing for you. It's the best thing for your family. It's the best thing for the earth. So then I said, I think my heroes in this, like, William McDonough and Michael Braungart, they've written this book called Cradle to Cradle like 15 years ago, right? Like now 2007, 2008, like real stalwarts. One of them is a chemist and the other one is an architect, right? Really amazing work. And they say that, look, there's nothing wrong in living in abundance. And they give an example of the infinite shower, right? So they're like, everyone loves a hot shower. It's really bad for the environment, right? We use electricity to heat the water. We use so much water to do it, but nobody wants to complain about that, right? Because nobody wants to not take a hot shower. But they're like, why don't we, if we could make a shower that is solar powered, and all the water we use gets recycled and cleaned using solar energy and then used back for showers, you could have the longest shower ever, and it's not a bad thing, right? Because we're being net positive about it. Now, this is an absurd example. I'm not saying you have to build this shower, but it's metaphorically, it makes sense, right? Like, how do we become net positive assets where abundance is not a bad thing? I think that's psychology that I approach sustainability with. I think that's more realistic. And that's why maybe I don't have eco-anxiety as much. And I feel like the doom and gloom nature that a lot of people have, I don't know if it's always helpful, because I think sometimes panic does paralyze. Yes, fear sometimes is a good motivator. Like, our whole mode or reason for survival is like fear-based, right? Like the fear of death is what has helped us to evolve to be what we are today. So I understand that being a strong motivator, but after a certain point, too much fear, too much anxiety is not helpful to the equation. And you have to be more realistic. And painting a picture that is more realistic, that doesn't make everybody into monks, I think will create more hope and aspiration to make this happen, right? So I think that's where I land. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I don't know what the right answer is, but we try.
I love it. I love this point of view. Absolutely. Because a lot of times you're absolutely right. And, in one of these big conferences that I'd attended recently, and there was this entire conversation within the fashion industry about the global north and global south, right? And now we have the global north who's like really getting aggressive about regulations and, looking at the global south, which is largely manufacturing, who they've exploited for so many years, made all of their profits. And then now they come to us to say, hey, but, you need to do in order to get so many certificates so that we can wear this, feather in our hat to say, hey, we are doing it right. And then the conversation flipped because we had, representation from the global south to exactly what you said, that y'all have done your share of exploiting the resources, making your money, and you're living in absolute privilege. And at a time where our economies are growing and our low middle class is just upgrading to a middle class and really just experiencing what lifestyle is or living is, or just having their little disposable income to really just go out and feel better, is when y'all are coming to our doors and saying, hey, stop this. So it was a very interesting conversation. And I love the fact that you brought a sense of responsible abundance, if I may call that.
Yeah, that's a really good phrasing.
That's a good one.
I might steal that from you.
Go for it. So, but I think, that's where a lot of the innovation and a lot of thinking and a lot of think tanks and that space really needs to grow. And maybe that's a different conversation, but I want to come back to MLP. Please tell me, what is MLP?
Yeah, MLP. So MLP stands for multi-layered plastic. It is your chips packets, your chocolate wrappers, your Taka packets, your Tetra Pak, right? Basically, you see like just one thin bag, but it's secretly made up of 3, 4, 5 multiple layers. There are multiple layers of plastic, sometimes paper, then a layer of aluminum oxide or aluminum on the inside. Because of these many layers, it becomes very hard to recycle. But before we talk about how hard it is to recycle, we have to understand why us humans will work so hard to make a packet of chips that's so complex with so many layers, right? Where as much as a lot of us are idiots, we're not, as a species, we're not, right? We're not the dominant species. We're smart people. We don't, we spend on the right things. So when these chips packets were developed, they were developed for a very important purpose. It was to preserve the freshness and the quality of the food for a very long period of time, prevent spoilage of food, right? Prevent it from UV radiation issues, from oxidation, from like smell, and then to allow it to be transported to many parts, to make sure it's light so that you can put it in small bundles and distribute it to people. So there was a method to this madness, right? I think what they did not take into consideration is that once the use of this is gone, then what happens to the packet of chips, right? And it's not very... Because there's so many materials and layers, it becomes very hard to recycle. And that's why it ends up in the oceans, in the landfills. Less than 1% of these packets of chips or these multi-layered plastic packaging is recycled globally. It's honestly the worst issue, right? Like, and again, from some people, everybody thinks plastic is one material and, and then they'll be like, different... They're like hundreds of different types of plastics. Even in consumer plastic, there's 6 main types, somewhat. And in that, your Bisleri bottles, your PET bottles, they're very highly recycled. But the rates anywhere from 50 to 60 to 90% in India. In Europe, it's about 50%. In the US, it's about 30%. But then you have to look at things differently. Flexible packaging, like packets of chips, they're thin films, less than 1% is recycled globally, right? So you have to be... something that I didn't know when I got into this space. It's a problem. It's a problematic issue. And the thing is, nobody wants to do anything. Nobody talks about it. And I'll tell you why. Because the manufacturers are like guilty, right? So they don't say, they're not going to be like, oh, this is bad. So they obviously keep quiet. The recyclers don't say anything about this either. Because they're like, we can't do anything about it. So I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about PET bottles and Harpic bottles and how bad they are. Because that's what I'm working on. So you don't hear about it as much, but if you go into the field, if you go to our waste pickers, if you go to people who are working in the scrap yards or in the landfills, they will tell you about this. Kurkure is what they call it. At least here in Maharashtra.
But tell me, where all in what all product categories are we seeing the penetration of this multi-layer plastic or multi-layer packaging? To just simplify.
So mainly food, right? Because you want to preserve the life of food. So everything from your chips to chocolates to coffee, right? You see those coffee pouches that you get, they have like this laminates. It's also like in Tetra Pak is a type of multi-layer. It's also in your medicine, those aluminum foiled medicine that's like plastic and aluminum. It's multiple layers. So I think that's where it's majority of it's in that space. But you find it every day. You'll start seeing it. You'll start noticing it.
Also, there is monolayer and multi-layer. Can you tell me the difference in between both? And monolayer, also briefly in terms of recycling, why one is marginally better than the other, marginally.
So again, so think about this, right? So any plastics or any materials, they're like molecules. It's chemistry, right? And the more different materials you put, materials you put together, the harder the different polymers, different molecules that you put together, it becomes very hard to separate those molecules and recycle them. In an ideal world, you want paper, glass, plastic, and different types of plastics to all be separated into their own little worlds. So monolayer plastic or monolayer films, think your milk pouches. In India, milk pouches are used a lot. Sometimes, your T-shirt has like that polythene, like that transparent plastic around it. That's a monolayer. That's generally one material. So it's generally easy to recycle. It's generally LDPE, low density polyethylene. So it's easy. It's because it's like you don't have to do anything to it. But multi-layered is multiple layers. It'll be LDPE, low density polyethylene. It'll be polypropylene. It'll be PET. And there'll be some aluminum in it. So that's what makes it really complex. Like if you're mixing too many things, you can't. That's not helpful. So monolayer is generally more. Is easier to recycle, but then it gets mixed with multi-layers. That becomes a problem as well. So there's no consistency, and there's lack of consistency along with the lightness of it, right? Like it's so. Like just think about it. It's like it's so light that to make 1 kilo of flexible packaging, you have to pick up or you have to separate out like hundreds of pieces of this. Whereas like with 20 bottles, 30 bottles, you'll make a kilo, right? So again, that like the volume and the bulk density of it is important as well. So yeah, I mean, that's the difference between monolayer and multiple layers.
And how did you get into it? And why did you choose to work with something which is impossible to recycle? First, why and how? Because I mean, we've spoken so many times. I still have to come to your factory, still have to see your lab. We've seen so many videos, and I have a visual understanding of how you're collecting, cleaning, breaking it down, and then doing your magic in your chemistry lab. But walk me through it. Firstly, why you chose to pick up a challenge that was tagged impossible. And I think that's why even when you launched, it really caught everybody's eye, because people who knew that, okay, this material has been a problematic material, and like you said, nobody wanted to touch it. So you really went viral when you just did that one packets of chips coming and cool glasses are coming. It was fun. So why and how?
So the why, I think because we really wanted to, I mean, I'm not just saying this because we're like on a podcast or not, or whatever, I think we really wanted to solve real problems. And so there was, I mean, most recyclers who get into this space, most recyclers who get into recycling of any sort are primarily there to make money. And it's fine. It's a good way to make money, right? You're doing something good for the environment. But then you wouldn't choose MLP because it's so hard. You're like, why? I'll just work with PET bottles and ATP bottles and I'll make easy money with it, or like it'll be easier to make money with it. But we are not. We're truly impact first. We're trying to solve real problems. And I'm like, and I had this unfair advantage of capital that I could invest into this. I'm like, why would I choose an easy problem? It has to be sufficiently complex. That's really taking that risk. So that's why we chose packets of chips. And then the how was it was a long process. I think, we approach everything with first principles. So when we studied multi-layered plastic, we knew that we had to separate the layers, because you want to just separate the layers. The less multiple layers there are, the better it is, right? The more separated they are, the better it is. So we knew that was the goal. And we also knew that one level above that, our goal was to increase the economic value of waste. So from my perspective, if you take waste, if you make it more valuable, then incentives align to collect it, to process it. Today it's a waste picker picking up. Tomorrow it's going to be the government. Someday it's going to be some private collector. But if you make waste valuable, everything works. That was the first principle. The second first principle that we had was, okay, let's MLP. If we can make MLP valuable because it's the least recycled, then people will want to recycle it and collect it and do something with it. Then we knew that the third first principle was that you have to separate the layers. So how do you separate the layers? And yeah, I mean, I realized it involved some chemistry and polymer science. So I was like, I'm not a chemist. So I think the first thing I did was I put an ad up I created a website and I was like, hey, this is what I'm going to try and do. And I tried to hire a scientist who could help me with this, right? And I think I found Dr. Jitendra Sandani on LinkedIn. He found me, and we, I had like hundreds of people apply. And I think I had like multiple rounds of interviews. I think I had 4 or 5 final candidates. Anyway, so it was, people wanted to join the cause, etc. And it was also a job. Like, I was paying salary, like fair market salary and equity, etc. So I think that happened. And then, Jitu came on board, and we started with, 1 packet of chips, 2 desks, 2 chairs, a stirrer. And I think, the rest is history. I think Jitu, for this first experiment, we got some luck. We was like, so we got like a breakthrough, and we're like, it's too easy. This is not like, there's no way. First experiment. And then when we showed it to one of our advisors who's into sustainability, who understands the space, he was like, oh my God, he got really excited. So when he got excited, we got excited, because we're like, sure, like we didn't know. So I think then, that was just the beginning. That first experiment, and where we are today is like literally 5,000 experiments later, and it's a lot more sophisticated. But yeah, little by little, first principles. Man, if you have the right motivation, Darshana, it's so it's unbelievable. I'm surprised at the shit that I did because of my motivation to try to solve problems and to dedicate myself to something more meaningful, and not to be some hero, right? Just for my own sanity and self-worth, because I'm like, this is like, I don't want to make rich people richer because I lived that life. So that was the how, and I think we've gotten obviously some success. We've gotten, proof of value and all of that. But I tell the team and I tell everybody I speak with right now that the next 2 years are the most important, because we have some, we have some proof of concept, but we have to make sure this technology scales and is economically viable at scale. And we obviously have confidence that it will, but it's like I tell the team, it's like we're going to the Olympics, guys. We're prepared. 4 years, we've prepared and we have the resources, and, there's no drama from that perspective. But just going to the Olympics is not enough. You have to actually run the race. You have to actually win a medal, or even finish the race at least, right? So, we're prepared for the Olympics, but we still have to run the race. We might crash and burn, or we might, do okay, or we might do really well. But these 2 years are the most important years of our organization's life, of my life personally. This is my baby. So the how is yet to be written, it's halfway there, I think. Not even. But it's just a long way to go.
What's amazing here is, and I'm not taking any credit away from all the hard work that has gone in, and I know how committed you are. But when you talk about it the way you do, it does not technically feels like a massive issue that couldn't have been addressed by the biggies of the industry, right? So if you got Jitu, you got a table and chair and a little lab, the makers of MLP could have done this as well by just opening up this position, creating the motivation or creating that goal. So how do you see this?
No, that's a good question. That's a really good question. That's a really good question, right? And I keep asking myself this as well. I'm like, what are we? We're not anybody special. And in fact, I think the plastic manufacturers are the most equipped to be able to do something with this because they understand the polymer chemistry so well. They already have scale. I think a lot of them are working on this. Recycling is very hot. People are going to get involved, and you're going to see more solutions from big providers coming in. It's evident. It's inevitable. But I think what I've learned, having kind of spoken to many of these big folks, and kind of even forget plastic manufacturers, but even FMCG companies that have billions of dollars in cash that they can just throw at this problem. I think what we don't realize is that for all the beautiful things that humans have built, human organizations are also very chaotic and bureaucratic, and they're not as agile, right? And honestly, I think, and I could be wrong here, but motivation is impossible to value. You can't buy motivation. I think it's really hard. I think you can't maybe if you throw millions of dollars at the problem, you will be able to solve this. But I think motivation is harder to find because and also what I've seen in these big organizations is they're not lethargic, but they're elephants. They move slowly. They're not agile. So, and even if they have some breakthroughs, you need to get buy-in from one level above, one level above, one level above. And then in that, it gets lost because the higher up you go, the more busy people get and priorities change and things don't get enough value. I think what we did it was a long concerted effort, despite a lot of scientists and advisors telling us you're being idiots and laughing us out of the room, right? To us to be no, there's something here. We have to keep going. And also kind of bringing together different worlds. One is science, but also second is economics. We value every single experiment that we do. When you hey, if we scale this, will it be economically viable, right? So looking at and also we came in from, we did not use Maslow's hammer, right? So Maslow's hammer is this idea that, okay, I know chemical engineering, I have one hammer and I'll use that hammer to hit every nail, to solve every problem, even if it's not a nail, right? So people who know chemistry only use chemistry to solve problems. People who know physics only use physics. We're no, we want everything is fair game. So I think we've been more holistic about it. And we've also not let perfect be the enemy of good, right? We've kind of been look, our solution isn't perfect. So how do you keep building towards it? So I think that's my way of rationalizing why we've gotten some success and somebody hasn't. But look, our patent is granted. It's in the public domain. I'm sure somebody is going, if somebody really cares, they can, they can look at it and see what we do and try to emulate that. But again, it's the barriers to entry are really high. There's no motivation. Who's motivated to do this? Nobody wants to, even people don't want to get into the kachra. They don't want to, like, they're like, oh, I don't, smell, it stinks. Like, there's no motivation. People are trying to solve this. They're trying to solve industrial waste. They're like, I'll take all the nice MLP from these MLP manufacturing factories and just use the industrial waste because it's, it'll be fine. And I'm like, that's great, you'll do that, but it's still not solving the problem of the post-consumer waste. We're doing post-consumer waste. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I think, I don't know. Either we got really lucky, or we are like completely delusional, or I think, in the next couple of years, some big players will come and do something similar. But the way I think about it is that there's enough of this problem, right? It's like, we're not like, somebody tells us, oh, so you're an MLP solution. Does that mean you're enabling MLP, right? Because you're recycling MLP, you're allowing these manufacturers to produce more MLP. And I'm like, wow, what an argument. Now, what is, you want me to stop recycling so that they can stop producing? Let's see how that goes. But no, I think, but that's a fair argument, right? And people are saying that if, there's a big movement towards reducing multi-layer plastic and usage of multi-layer plastic. And I'm like, that's great. I'm not going to try and reduce that. Like, stop using, let's reduce as much and stop using MLP altogether. But let's not pretend that's going to happen overnight. And also, we've built an organization where we're not obsessed. Our goal is not just MLP. That's our starting point. Instead of choosing the easy stuff, we start with the hardest. Like, starting with the easy plastic and then going to the hardest. We started with the hardest. And we'll eventually, like, even the pilot plant we're building right now is going to be a holistic all plastic solution. Because again, MLP is one part of the problem, right? There are many other parts, like in the textile industry, polycotton textile waste is such an issue, right? Textile waste is an issue in that specifically. In India, textile waste is not as big an issue as in the other parts of the world because we are so frugal and, everybody uses their old t-shirt as a cleaning cloth everywhere, but in the West, it's even worse. Fast fashion is coming to India now, so the elites in India are seeing it. But in that, if you double click this thing called polycotton, and this, but it's a mixture of polyester and cotton. Polyester is a plastic, is a polymer, and cotton is cellulose. Also, it's an organic. It's a natural polymer, and mixing these two makes it impossible to recycle. But guess what? Polycotton is amazing material, right? Like, you love it. It's stretchy. It feels nice. So, it's, but we have technology right now that we have been able to separate the polyester and cotton, and put it back into its lanes and use it again, right? So we are trying to look at the entire gamut and trying to solve problems holistically, and by incorporating the social sector, which again, we'll talk about, I guess, at some point. So I don't know what the answer is, Darshana. I don't know. Maybe you've worked across the spectrum, startups and big companies.
No, honestly, I don't have an answer. And I was just thinking to myself when you were speaking that, do you look at yourself as a threat or a strength then to the mainstream plastic manufacturing?
I don't know. I don't see myself as... first of all, I feel like no single person is going to solve this problem.
It's too big. It's too big.
I don't really look at it. Yeah, it's too big. And I also don't, I think, I don't like to take sides. I'm not like, I'm not going to try and run after plastic manufacturers and yell at them. It's like, look, we very much believe in putting our head down and working, doing the dirty work, getting it done. Let everybody else have, advocacy fights. That's fine. I don't believe that. I think if you want to really make change happen in the plastic industry, you cannot yell at them. Yelling doesn't help. You have to understand where they're coming from, their livelihoods. Plastic has done a lot of good for the world as well. You have to appreciate that. And then maybe you can start making change happen, right? Like 70% in volume of a car is plastic. This 30, 50 years ago was all metal, or most of it was metal. Because 70% of the volume is plastic now, the overall weight of a car has dropped so much that the carbon footprint that a car is able to, the amount of carbon footprint reduced because of plastic in cars is probably done more good than any alternative material or sustainable thing, right? So when I heard about this stat, I was like, shit, yeah, obviously that makes sense, right? And so I'm not going to ignore it because that's not ethical. I'm just going to be like, oh, let me appreciate that as a fact. That doesn't mean that MLP is not an issue. That doesn't mean that single-use plastic is not an issue, right? It's not a binary, right? How do we look at things holistically? How do we minimize single-use plastic, single-use anything? Single-use paper straws are bad for the environment, are bad products, it's bad, right? It's, because you have to look at the life cycle analysis. I don't think trees should be used to make straws that are used once. That's not the good use of trees. I'm sorry. So it's complex, right? And I think, so I feel like and people, you all want to try to simplify things. Plastic is bad, trees are good, and trees are good, but trees, like wood is good. Is it good? That's why crafts. Shubham, like they're using rice husk waste, and they're like, look, we're preventing trees from being deforested, right? And I think that's important, right? It doesn't mean that he's pro plastic. He's just like, don't kill trees to make paper. So I don't know. So I think I feel like the more I adapt, and that's my urge to a lot of people at home is, like, pursue truth, be open-minded, don't just jump onto bandwagons. I think plastic is more, it's a more complicated thing. It's not the best thing in the world, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's got issues like everything has, and let's look at it holistically. And then maybe we can have a proper conversation with the plastic manufacturers and with the packaging people, and then with we can actually make change happen, because I don't think anybody wants a bad, like, an earth that is like littered. Nobody wants that. I don't think even the plastic manufacturers want, like, even they're like, it's funny when I go to these plastic conferences hosted by plastic manufacturers, their perspective is that plastic is not the issue, the collection system is the issue, right? Like, we need to collect all the plastic and recycle it, right? And bring it back into the economy. It's a great material. And I mean, while it's one-sided of their perspective and they're very biased, against anything else, it is true. It is right. Like, even if we replace all plastic with, let's say, wood or with biomaterials, are we enabling littering then? You just throw it into the oceans because they'll decompose. You don't know everything has additives in them, and most biodegradable plastics don't biodegrade, right? They need to be industrially compostable, not just compostable at home. So there's so many caveats, right? So I think we have to I really hope that people pursue truth, and try to not be evil, just like point fingers at everything, without fully understanding the issue.
No, I fully resonate with this. And I think we really need to make this conversation more gray. This is not a black and white conversation. Like, plastic is good or bad. It is one of the greatest inventions of its times. It's just that we were not responsible handling it. We just went berserk saying, oh, this is great, let's just use it everywhere, without thinking the end of life for it. So you're absolutely right.
It was the greenest material ever discovered. You know why?
Really?
Because it replaced ivory. So in the past, the reason why plastic was developed was because they were using these rich people in the past were using ivory to play pool. They used pool balls. They used elephant tusks to make those, right? So one of the first uses of plastic was replacing elephant tusks with a material made from oil. So at that point, it was considered one of the most ethical materials in the 1860s, 1890s, the 1880s, 1890s. So it's so interesting, right? Like, obviously now it's more complex than that. But to your point, yes. Yeah.
I like that. I didn't know that. Thank you for the trivia. Okay, great. This is going amazing. I'm loving it, thoroughly enjoying it. I want to get down to some impact, etc. But I think this has been a little heavy. So just want to take a little break. And I have put together some rapid fire questions for you.
Oh, God. Rapid fire. That's rapid.
And thanks to Karan Johar, there's only one way of doing rapid fire. That is keeping it rapid and full of fire.
I talk a lot, so this is really hard,
We'll see. We'll see. I'll interrupt you. I'll cut you.
Interrupt me.
Yeah.
Let me off. Just, you can do this. Yeah.
Are you ready for the first one?
Sure.
If Without had a mascot, what would it be and why?
It would be nothing, right? Because it's without.
I like that. I like that. That was short also. Okay. What's your go-to way to unwind after a long day of saving the planet?
Do nothing. Or read.
Or just be without anything.
Just be without. Yes.
This is going back to the showcase, by the way. You remember?
Is it?
Without inhibitions, without this, without that.
Yes. We need Amanda to be a part of this now. We should add her to the rapid fire.
Oh God, what a time that was. Okay.
That's so fun.
What's that one snack that you'll never give up, even though you're turning chips packets into sunglasses?
Ooh, dairy milk, man. Just before this, I went down, got like some Cadbury. I like my chocolate, yo.
I like that.
It's my escape.
Interesting. If Without were to collaborate with a brand, any brand in the world, who would you choose and why?
I mean, sounds really cliche, but one of our dreams is to make the first ever phone that's completely recycled. So we'd love to partner with somebody like an Apple or a nothing phone, without and nothing. That
Without
would
and
be
nothing.
great, right?
That's the one.
That's what we should do. Nothing made from without.
I love it. Okay, that's your pitch. We're sending it to
I should
nothing now.
clip this, and tag them.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Okay. And the last one. What was the most unexpected or funny reaction you've gotten when people heard that your sunglasses were made from kachra?
There've been a lot, but I think I mean, no, I don't know. There's nothing insane.
Rapid.
I think people were very scared. They were like, "Is it safe? Is it all that?" Like, it's nothing. I mean, extra. They were just very confused. It just was like, "What is it? What?" Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? Like, packets of chips, why sunglasses, why glasses? So, yeah, no.
Great. Now I'm going to take names of a few people, and I need one word for that. We'll come a little later to who these people are, but one word for each of them. Sangeeta Wagmare.
Oh my God, loaded. One word. Hopeful. I mean, for me at least. It's a very heavy story, the whole thing. I mean,
I'm coming to that in a bit. Seema Rode.
It's all heavy stuff. Just her smile. I think she's got the best smile in the world.
Rahul Dake.
Dude, he's the dude of the organization. Dude.
Jayashree Sambar.
I mean, it sounds really bad, but her teeth, she's always like whenever I look at her, she's a very toothy grin. So that's what I think of when I see her. Very toothy, very, very grinny. Grinny's a better word.
And lastly, Praveen Wagmode.
Kaka, Mama. It's just a stalwart, right? He's like stalwart, just committed.
Super. Now tell me who these people are, what they mean to Without, and how have they changed your life?
So yeah, I mean, these are all our former waste pickers or informal workers. They are former informal workers who now work at Without, and they're my colleagues. And they work hard as hard as me and many other people, and they work much harder than me outside at their homes to to make ends meet. But yeah, I mean, they are they're just very important members of our team at Without.
That's sweet. But let's deep dive a little into the social impact bit, and how you have been able to I don't want to sound too preachy or give you too much importance, but how did you do what you did? Let me just keep it to that. So maybe you talk us through what is the life of a typical rag picker, for the lack of a better word. And that is what is understood by most of the population. So what is their life like? And how have you built in systems to make that better?
I mean, it's the average waste picker in India makes somewhere between 3,000 to 12,000 rupees a month, depending on how they do this. It depends on how much waste they collect, right? They are mainly low caste migrant workers. They generally are 90% of the waste pickers in Pune are women. They generally work in waste without PPE, without, any life expectancy is much lower than the average folks. So yeah, I mean, it's tough lives. I don't have to explain that to anybody. But there are like people like you and me, right? They also have complexities in their lives. They have mother-in-laws. One of our one of our optimizers, that's what they call them, is having major domestic issues because of just a mother-in-law, right? And so they're having like big. So it's like they're still humans, they're like us, right? But I think everything is a little bit more exacerbated because they lack resources. They just don't. I mean, they have strong support systems sometimes, but like there's always a lack of resources when it comes to money, exposure, not as educated in general. Anyway, but no, I think it's like part of my realization when I was in New York was that I want to use the privilege that I have to build a world where, you know, more people have the basic needs, right? Which is access to health, education, livelihoods, some sort of dignity, right? So I've less, I don't have anything against the rich. It's fine, you know, can be rich, but we have to raise the floor, man. Like, you know, like let's at least do that, right? And I think, and then, you know, then people can have agency. They can do what they want. If somebody wants to go become a monk, go become a monk. Somebody wants to become really a billionaire, go become a billionaire. Somebody wants to just live an average life, that's fine, right? But nobody should worry about food, water, electricity, education, dignity, right? And I think that's what we're trying to strive towards. And I think that's one of my core inspirations for the work that I do. So yeah, so what we do at Without is that not only are we in deep technology, but we also are trying to have deep social impact, where we take these former waste pickers and we formalize them. We give them employment agreements, which doesn't mean anything to them or to me, really, if you think about it. But it's a piece of paper that hopefully formalizes them. But more importantly, we upskill them. They learn. They're no longer waste pickers. They've graduated out and they're, you know, running injection molding machines, extruders, the assembly lines. Sangeeta Wagmare is now doing is on the computer, and she's like doing all our inventory, and she's the one who like creates all the invoices to send things. So they're a part of the organization. They've graduated out. And the income's increased by an average of 2x. They have health insurance, but not only that, we teach them how to use the health insurance. I think recently one of our optimizers was sick, and she ended up in the hospital for a couple of 3-4 days, and her bill was like 30,000 rupees, and she had insurance, right? So she ended up paying it somehow, and then we spent 2 days on the phone with our insurance company, submitting paperwork, talking, etc., fighting with them to get it reimbursed, right? I'm like, how? I mean, she doesn't know how to read and write properly. How is she going to get on a computer and submit these forms, right? So giving somebody health insurance is not enough. Like, what's the point? Like, they need to know how to use it, right? So now, after that, we had somebody else who was admitted in the hospital because they were sick. And now we went to hospitals. We taught them, listen, go to a hospital that is covered by your insurance. But even when they went to that hospital, they were told that you have to pay a deposit up front because people like you never ever come to our hospital. So and then they didn't have that cash. So I got a call being like, hey, can we, so it's just like, it's like our systems are not built for this, right? One of our ways, Jay, she didn't trust the banking system because she felt like the bank was deducting money, but she can't read and write. So how does she withdraw money from the bank? So she wanted to only get paid in cash. Now, we worked with her, went to the bank, got things fixed with her. I mean, there's like every day there's a story and it's like not nice, the story. It's just so interesting how much we take for granted the privilege we have and systems we have. So it's very grounding. I don't see that as like a special thing that we do. I see that as an obligation for us to be a part of this. And, and there's a flip side to this as well, right? Like, I'll tell you a couple of, first, before I tell you the flip side, a very interesting thing happened, right? We had a new material scientist we hired. She has a PhD from IIT. But she'd never really used an extruder before, which is more of a complex instrument. So we had one of our former waste picker, an optimizer, teaching her, an IIT student, how to use an extruder, right? This person has never gotten a chemical engineering degree, and he knows how to use a really complex machine very well now, because he's been doing it for the last year, right? So everybody's capable. And the flip side of this, that, I think some people don't realize that, yes, in the short run, it's more difficult because, you have to spend some time. It's more expensive to upskill and the patients to kind of, because also to build their trust, because if they're constantly, there's so much uncertainty in their life, right? But once they do that, then they're the most, sounds bad, but they're very loyal, right? I mean, they trust you and they are committed, like the attrition is low, they're not going to go anywhere, and so those are helpful things for the organization as well, right? They're steady and they do not, and for some of our more like our non-optimizers, I like have more complaints about basic things, and the bathroom, the area, this, that. I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, I'm not diminishing complaints, but it's just so interesting that there's flip side. In the long run, I hope that this might even be good for our business, because just there'll be legacy there. There'll be lower attrition. Attrition, one of the biggest issues of performance. And I mean, that's not the reason why we're doing this, but how do we have to build a model that is economically viable and sustainable, right? So yeah, I mean, that's a really important part of our work. But I don't want it to become. It's very important for us to not put them on a pedestal, or not to put them any lower than us. They're just like us. And after all of this, you ask them, I remember asking them once, what's the best part about working here? And they're like, we get paid on time, right? And it's just like, like, that's such a low bar, dude. I mean, you get paid on time. That's the best part. Like, anyway, so it is, I mean, it's it is what it is.
So do you have any goals for the number of lives that you want to not touch but change? Do you have a North Star for this?
Yeah, like 100%. I think my ambition is really vast. But I think the ambition is not like, it's not like tomorrow, right? I feel like I want to spend the rest of my life working on this. Next 20, 30, 40 years. Because again, I want systemic, permanent change. And even if this fails, let's say in the next couple of years, we're not able to build an economically viable model, then it's like, I will try something else in a way that'll change lives permanently. That's not something. I mean, we started a parallel nonprofit that's going to complement what we do, to be able to upskill, also to be able to funnel more CSR funds, and to be able to upskill and add to the cause of what we're trying to do. So I think I don't consider private limiteds or nonprofits as separate things. I consider them as tools to allow us to solve the problem that we need to create, right? Solve the problem that we need to solve. So the ambition is really vast. I think I remember one of my uncles and our investors. He was like, Anish, there are like 4 million waste pickers in India. Even if you hit like 10% of that, with the change you want, that's really sizable. But obviously, my ambition is much larger. I really want to create systemic solutions for waste. I mean, I don't really want to talk about my long-term ambition. It's really crazy, but yeah, I mean, I think the goal is to impact as many people as possible, in the millions, in some way or the other, deeply, right? And first you build systems, and then you build ideas that can have really multiplicative effects. And I think that's the long run. That's the play, right? So first systems, and again, we're trying to build a system. We're trying to break the system, right? Not break. That's not right. We're trying to mold the system. We're trying to bend the arch of capitalism in a way that's going to be more holistic, right? And we're trying to make it more, like I tell the team, for us, it's so much more important to have better margin, because the impact we try to make is more expensive. So if we have to be that much better, from an operational perspective than an average company that doesn't have to worry about some of these things. So there's more pressure on us to be even more cutting edge in what we do. So yeah, I mean, I don't have a number. I mean, but it's really vast.
I like that. It's a vague yet extremely aspirational North Star. We won't touch it. We'll just see you reach there. But let's talk about product. I've seen Touch own your product, and now it's diversified a lot. And we'd like to take a little credit for that. So tell us what your product is now. I saw some really cool pictures of some posters on your social media. So what all are you making? What all do you want to make? And I know that you do not want to get into the product business, but largely the material business.
Sunglasses.
So talk a little about the product, what you are doing right now.
So sunglasses obviously not going to solve any problems. It's just a proof of concept that you can take like impossible recycled plastic waste and make like something of high quality, premium at a high recycled content. And like the frames are 100% recycled. We don't add any virgin plastic to it. We do add additives and compatibilizers, but no virgin plastic. So it's a proof of concept. And the long, so yeah, I mean, our first sunglasses and the one we have right now are much better. Even fundamentally, our sunglasses and not anything special. They're just basic. I think what we're proud of is the properties we've been able to get, the coatability, the printability on it. Those are things that are important. we're doing coasters that are easy. Coasters aren't hard. But we're also, what's in the pipeline right now is candle holders and plant pots uh, uh, and keychains, just some easy products to kind of just create an arsenal of those. But our focus is very much going to be on B2B, where we want to partner with small and medium brands to be like, look, all small and medium brands in elite India and the US and in Europe want to be sustainable, but they're not going to compromise on quality, because the consumer, and you're a founder, ex-founder, you know this, right? Like, quality matters, right? The people want it to be cool. So we want to give sustainability that doesn't suck, right? Basically, I'll be like, look, we don't have to compromise on quality. You get the story, you get a sustainable angle. We don't have to pay a premium. That's what we want to get to it. Especially in the Western brands, we can get to like a no premium. We're selling in the West, but so I think we want to start partnering with small and medium brands. And I think what we're coming up with, and so in the next month or two, you'll see like we're going to be launching a new website, which is, I feel like we're revealing our face for the first time, because if you go to a website now, you think we're a sunglasses company, and we're not. We're more than that. We're going to be a sustainable manufacturing partner to small and medium brands. That's what we want to be. And we'll help you craft your products or your components, and we'll manufacture it for you as well, and provide you the complete transparency in the supply chain from an environmental perspective and from a social perspective that makes it extremely environmentally friendly and sustainable, but also of high quality. We're obsessed about mechanical properties. So I think we're trying to partner with eyewear companies. We're trying to partner with toy companies. We're in this divergent phase right now. We want to kind of see, because the material is very versatile. And then and we're going to launch this thing called Made Without, right? So like what we want is, like you have when you have a laptop, you have the Intel Inside sticker and on it, right? That's what we want to be, right? Like, we want to have, when you see a phone, when you see a bottle, if you see it's made without, you can feel like, oh, first of all, like, made without, what does that mean? That's cool. I love that. But also more like, hey, we want you to be without worries because we're going to work really hard to make sure it's the most sustainable material out there as we build a world without waste. So that made without is something that we want to really partner. So we want to be that partner for young and smaller. And that's what we're trying to focus on in the next 2 years. And then I think we'll get to pure materials. So I think it's all a part of that, of that chain, because materials has to be at really high volumes, Darshana. And I think we're too small. And even at the next stage, we'll be too small to be able to, even at the next stage, it will not be big enough. So I think eventually, on a really big scale, we'll be able to sell materials and create an economically viable solution. So I think that's where the product's at. So you'll see some big changes in the next month or two, I think, if everything goes to plan.
Tell me a little about the QR code that's there on your product. What does that do? Where does it take you? And why do you do it?
So the QR code. So the QR code is just a way for us to kind of show off our impact, right? Like, so when you scan this QR code, I think, on our products, they'll take you to a page where you'll see that, oh, these sunglasses were made on this day or in this month. Where the waste came from, also which waste pickers worked on it, right? Like, you'll see the photos of the waste pickers that helped, the former waste pickers, or now my colleagues, who helped make these sunglasses come to life. 50 to 60% of our work is done by waste pickers who are integrated in the supply chain. And we're no longer waste pickers, right? They're contributing members. But you can see the stories. You can see where the waste came from. You can see how we've neutralized the carbon footprint of the delivery of the sunglasses as well. So all those things are really what you see when you scan the QR.
Congratulations, once again, such incredible work. I love it.
Thank you, Darshana. Thank you for being a part of the journey. I think I've learned many lessons from everything that we went through. So thank you.
Though your journey has just begun, let's say 15 months, because we thought it was 3 years ago that you launched, but not so much. But you've had quite an exciting journey, especially the past 15 months, if I have to say. Can you share some of the milestones that were incredible and that has pushed you to do deeper work, better work, faster work? What are some of these milestones, and how have these milestones sort of affected you in positive and negative way? I'm sure there is pressure also that gets built when there is a big milestone, whether it is funding or whether it's Shark Tank or whether it's just that amount of visibility and love that Without has gotten. So talk me through some of those.
So I think when we launched our sunglasses, we didn't know what to expect, and I think we had okay, worst case will be this, middle case will be this, and best case will be this. I think when we launched, we exceeded our best expectations. So it was very validating because we felt that we went quote unquote viral or whatever for the right reasons, right? We want some meme or some dumb thing that happened. It was like, oh, these guys worked hard, and we feel like we were rewarded for the work that we did. But I was just obviously just sunglasses are not going to solve the problem, but it was a good validation. That was obviously a big pivotal moment. And ever since then, it's just been a whirlwind of goodness, right? I think I think in the good, we've gotten a lot of exposure. We've been on many TV shows. We've covered hundreds of news publications. We've been on TV shows. We've been at Lakme Fashion Week twice, thanks to you guys. I think those have been nice, but sometimes distracting as well, because you feel like are you making actual progress on what we want to do, which is to solve these problems at a scale. And I think so. Some of the bigger milestones have been that the properties, the material we've gotten, the latest version of our material that we have, the pilot plant that we're building in the next 2 months that's going to be put up, at least the base. Like when I see the piping and instrumentation diagram of our pilot plant, oh my God, that feels like an achievement because it seems like something that is so interesting. So I think those are milestones that I really treasure. And I think on the negative part, it's been harder to close a round of funding than we thought it was going to be. It's been hard to find true patient capital. But I think we found a great set of investors who really care and believe in what we do and what we want to try and solve. We've had some, so that's that's been a bittersweet little pill. It's sucked a lot of energy out of me because I think we're kind of in the middle of, we're not a non-profit, we're not a pure for-profit, so people get very confused, and systems aren't built for companies like us. And I think either we're idiots or we're really smart. I think the next 2 years we'll find out which bucket we fall into. So I think from Milestones perspective, I think our biggest milestones are yet to come. I think the pilot plant would be a big milestone. But yeah, I think the last 15 months have been, it's been a lot. There's been a lot that's going on. We've grown from a team of 10 people to 25 now. Just going to grow more. We still have to figure out a monetization strategy. So yeah, we've hit some benchmarks that are good, but I feel I remember after Shark Tank, I felt very low after it was aired, because I felt like everybody thinks that everything is perfect in Without Land, right? And oh my God, these guys are killing it. I got text me you made it. I'm like, what do you mean you made it? We have so many things to figure out. We're so, and I feel like there's now more pressure because everybody else thinks that we're everything, you're not sorted out, you're not, no, everything, you haven't figured everything out yet. So it was a very interesting emotion. But no, I feel, in the end, I feel really lucky and fortunate to have excellent support, a support system, whether it's my parents, my friends, my investors, folks like you, Darshan, Amanda, multiple funders and founders, people who've supported us. I feel so lucky to do the work that I can do, and gives us a real chance to make change happen. So yeah, I feel very I feel very blessed, I guess, in some ways. And I think, I don't know if that answers your question, but they've been great. A lot of
it does, and
a lot of firsts.
And a lot of firsts more to come also, I'm sure. You're such a long way ahead of you. But I do, these initial believers are really the angels, especially in a journey so tough where everything is ambiguous, and there are still people who come to you. And I think just at that stage, as a founder, you are completely lost, and you don't know what is this road, whether this road is the right road, whether I'm driving in the right at the right speed, all of that. But I think the initial believers are really the key and the foundational support that you need. So who would be this initial believers that you want to thank today?
No, I think I don't give enough credit to my parents and my sister. I think they have just wouldn't be able to do. They eat my shit, man. They eat the most of it. I think they've been so supportive and everything, financially, emotionally, in all ways, right? And I think it wouldn't that's why I feel in fact, it makes me feel more lucky that it makes me feel more obligated, because I have an amazing support system to use this to do good things. Because what a waste if I don't take advantage of the support so to do good, right? So my parents and my sisters are just like indispensable. Very lucky. Great set of friends who've been supportive. The team, obviously, like the team is stuck in for like so long now. Many of them have. Some of them are new, but many of the OGs. We'll always be grateful for them. And then yeah, man, we had the early believers. Whether it's whether it's an organization that gave us a little grant before our sunglasses. I think everybody before the sunglasses, deserves to be called an early believer. They've been, I think Dr. Vaibhav Gaikwad has been with us from the start, and he has a PhD in sustainability, and he's the one who actually interviewed Jitu in the beginning as well, and he's been an advisor, and he's been with us like 4 years. So lucky to have him, and sounding board. So yeah, I mean, it's like I can't. There's like a long list. We have some of our investors, some of my family members who've invested into Without, and just been so generous. I haven't had to ask anybody, right? I didn't ask anybody for money. It's just, at least from my family or my extended family, it's just been so, people have been so generous. It's so overwhelming. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, really, really good. Just a lot of, people. Also, I want to give a shout out to the people that, not like we made it or anything, but like the naysayers, right? The people who were bold enough to be like, this is not going to work, or this is hard, or people who still say that, and I think that's really important because I don't want to dismiss it, because especially the ones that are genuine or know what they're saying or are genuinely worried, right? I think that's important because it makes me smarter. It makes us more, I feel like one of my pet peeves is to know all our weaknesses really well, right? And if somebody comes and tells me a weakness about us that we don't know, I get really mad. Like, how the hell do we not know this, right? And then I start respecting that person a lot because this person saw something that we couldn't see, and we're looking at everything all the time. So I think those folks also have been helpful. So yeah, it's been a very pleasant ride. Well, that's one way of looking at it, but it's been. I've been lucky. I think the problems we've had have been very good problems to have. So I feel lucky. I think the hardest part is done. I think taking the plane off to some extent, but I think the most important part and the most important part is now, right? Which is, we have to really crack the next 2 years, and then it's a different kind of hard. But like taking the plane off, dude, I remember before coming, even before, pellets, the first time it's like you had no idea how this is gonna work, right? No, it's like so nebulous. Even sunglasses, we're like, no way, how are we going to make sunglasses? Is it even going to work? I remember the first injection molding that we did with our sunglasses. Is this going to be even a thing? So that was really hard. I don't know how we had the motivation to keep going. It was just delusion because even some people on the team were like, we shouldn't do this. And then now they're like, oh my God, that the fact that we pushed ourselves and did that. So I think the hardest part is a little bit behind, but now the most important, the make or break part is coming up next.
And what would be maybe 2 or 3? No, that's Anish for you. So, but I like it. I like how it is very all-encompassing, holistic, responsive. Love it.
In the edit.
Yes, we जाने वाला. This is going to be a no effort episode. This is the first video. जो है देखो अभी. This is what you get. No, but now in your scaling journey, what would you say would be your top 2 or 3 challenges that you see?
I think the 2 biggest challenges are the team. Not in a negative way, but more like, hey, we have to build a team now that can help build new technology, that can help. We have not been able to afford a lot of talent because we don't have budget. Now we have a little bit of funding, so we might be able to get talent to be able to build. So building the team, making sure the culture remains, making sure the right ethos is there. That's really hard. I need more leaders in this organization. So that's one challenge that I'm facing right now. And the other is more technical, which is okay, we have a direction on this scaling, but we have to do this at scale. So there's a lot of unknowns there. And I think those are really, even something as small as finding a place to build this plant. How far away should it be from us? How close should it be from us? How expensive? If we go really far, it's cheaper, but then if you're doing R&D, even that, and that's close to an irreversible decision. So, we're trying to figure that out. And then it's a big chunk of money that has to go out for rent because it's 20,000 square foot space. So it's all of those things are really nerve wracking. And then we're placing order for machinery that takes 3, 6, 9 months to get made. The plant that we're building, that is the heart of what we do with the patent technology, that nobody else in the world has built before. So that's coming together. But when we do our first reaction, is it going to work? So technologically, that's really going to be an important thing from a challenge perspective. That is important. But yeah, I think those are the big challenges that I see.
I'm really excited to see this plant and lab. And just curiosity, would you be open to like invite people to your plant and just make it like a trip? Maybe, of course, school trips you should definitely do, but like adults, curious adults, something like that.
Yeah, so we're very transparent, even with our lab. Even with our lab, we let everybody come and see what we do. Maybe we're being foolish, but I really believe in transparency as much as possible. I mean, whereas big companies, they are super anal about not letting anybody into their facility. So yeah, no, I'm very much like, hey, come see, if you want to copy us, biggest flattery ever, right? Great, we need more of this. We need more people to be doing this. More people take these risks. We haven't figured it out yet. And I also believe execution is hard to copy sometimes. Just blindly, it's not a piece of code, right? It's something more. There's a lot of moving parts. It's very hard to you can't even write it down, just read it and copy it, right? Even if you come see it in the first, it's just not that easy. But I don't know, maybe I'm being naive, right? Maybe it's easy to copy. Maybe tomorrow, the big players will just copy this. But it's fine, and maybe it's great. And if it solves the problem, then, I've kind of done my bit.
Then you move to another problem.
I'm very open to having people. Then you move to another problem. Exactly. I think we're open to having people. We will be doing tours and things. One educational part of it is really important for us as well.
Great. I think that's pretty much it. I have nothing else to ask you unless you have some fun stuff that we haven't spoken of.
No, nothing. I feel like this has been good. I'm glad this happened.
Finally.
It would have been, I feel like finally, we should catch up properly, and we will at some point soon. But no, thank you for the platform and for all the support, Darshana. You've been believers early enough, and it's the platform you've given us. I think we've learned so much from the platform that you've given us, and I also have generally learned a lot from you. On some of the more icky issues we had to go through during the whole Circle Design Challenge situation. So no, it's been such a pleasure.
I have a ritual of asking a closing question to all my guests. And the question is that if you were to put a quote on a t-shirt, what would it be? But I'm not going to ask you that because your t-shirt is going to have the without logo with without written. And I'm still waiting for that t-shirt.
Yes. Yeah, I have to send you some shades also. Yeah, along here, lots of things. I will, I shall, we shall. I just need to have it. My team needs to get built now so that I guess some support.
So closing thoughts, Anish, there are a lot of entrepreneurs who might want to do something in the environmental space, in the impact space. There's a lot for a lot of people to do. Any parting thoughts or any thoughts that you think aspiring entrepreneurs, people in general, students, fresh graduates can look at circularity in a certain way, and what is it that they can potentially do?
I feel like I have a more negative take on this in general for entrepreneurs. First of all, if you want to be an entrepreneur, don't become an entrepreneur. It's not it's just very overrated as a profession. So be super sure you want to do this, and and make sure you understand the difficulties of being an entrepreneur, and not just focus on the glorified aspects of entrepreneurship. It's really hard. Before being an entrepreneur, go work for an entrepreneur who's doing work that is similar to what you want to do, so that you can learn from them, and then you can maybe start your own thing. If you think you're solving a real problem. So first thing is, don't rush to become an entrepreneur. Don't become one if you don't think it's worth it. If you're not ready for it, if you don't have the resources for it, you don't have unfair advantage. This is not a fair race. You need to have unfair advantage. Unfair advantage is money. Unfair advantage is knowledge. Unfair is connections. Unfair is you have a PhD in science. That's an unfair advantage, right? So don't. And the second is, don't kid yourself, right? Be honest, be truthful. If you are you in this to make money? That's fine. Just focus on making money then. Are you in to solve real problems? Then yes, then try and solve the problems in a way that is economically viable. But don't then be true to the problem, right? And go deep into the problem. Don't greenwash, etc. I don't know. I feel like I have a more I think 90% of startups in India or in the world fail. That's dumb. Like, why do we celebrate that? That's not a good statistic. Like, no, let's not create enterprises just to fail. They suck resources, suck time out of people. They break people, they put people into debt. So be really wise about starting up when you want to, and then be in it for the right reasons as well. Any good entrepreneur is not trying to maximize profit. Look at the biggest companies in the world. They're creating value. Maybe it's not solving impact like deep social environmental issues. Maybe solving a search thing or a photo thing, but it's solving a problem. So be obsessed with the problem. So I think that's my take on people that want to be entrepreneurs or are interested in this.
Love the reality check. Okay, now before we go, give a shout out. Where can people find you? How can they reach out to you? Give out your Instagram, your website. Let's flood you a little more.
Without.live is our website. Instagram is shop.without. Follow us. Buy our shades. Tell your entrepreneur friend to make us their sustainability partner. So
I like that. Superb. Anish, thank you so much. I'm very happy. I think my first video episode. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much, Anish, for joining us today and for this really fun, flowing conversation. I love how my first video episode has turned out to be. Thank you for making it to the end. And I'll see you soon.